Hey, all you sweet listeners. See what I did there? Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the NetSuite podcast. I'm your host, Kendall Fisher, but luckily for you, you won't have to listen to my nerdiness because on today's episode, we have a special guest host taking over, Oracle NetSuite's head of industry marketing, Ranga Bodla. Ranga will interview Mike Shannon, a NetSuite Regional sales manager, helping to improve corporate budgeting, forecasting, modeling, and reporting for organizations in North America. In fact, that's exactly what today's episode is all about, NetSuite's Planning and Budgeting Cloud Service, or PBCS. Ranga and Mike will dive into why we're talking about planning and budgeting right now, as well as the increased investment in planning and budgeting solutions. Finally, they'll break down the top 5 PBCS tools and why you should care.
You're listening to the NetSuite podcast, where we discuss what's happening within NetSuite, why we're doing it, and where we're heading in the future. We'll dive into the details about the software and the people at NetSuite who are behind all the moving parts. We'll also feature customer growth stories, discussing the ups and downs of running a company and how one integrated system can help your business continue to scale.
Before we get into this episode, I want to quickly thank our sponsors over at the Second City. Here's a little business insight that's almost too good to be true. Learning works best when you're laughing. Second City Works, the B2B side of the comedy mecca, the Second City, unleashes the improv methods pioneered on their world-famous stages to help companies and individuals improve performance. Their professional development programs unlock better ways to communicate, collaborate, and innovate, all while laughing till you learn. Visit secondcityworks.com to find out more.
Thank you to everyone for joining us today on the NetSuite podcast. I'm really excited to be joined by my guest, Mike Shannon. I've had many conversations with Mike before, but this is his first time appearance on the NetSuite podcast. And today we're going to dive into PBCS, which is also known as Planning and Budgeting Cloud Solution. We're going to talk mostly, we'll use PBCS because it's easier, but we'll try to make sure that we define it every now and then just to make sure. But before we dive in and really talk about the main topic, Mike, why don't you start off? Just give us a little bit of background on you. Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school?
Perfect. Well, Mike Shannon, thank you for having me here, Ranga. I'm based out of Seattle. I've lived there all but 2 years of my life. I was born in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and migrated quickly thereafter up to the Seattle area, and I've lived there ever since. My background is in finance, used to be a finance manager. I've used many of the solutions out there that are comparative to PBCS in the EPM space, and now I'm working for NetSuite doing the PBCS sales manager for North America.
EPM, can you define that just in case?
Absolutely. EPM is Enterprise Performance Management, and that includes solutions that are typically planning, budgeting, cloud, and doing all of those planning needs for the finance team.
So EPM, finance, kind of part and parcel together.
Yeah, exactly.
How'd you come into NetSuite?
Been here just over a year. Prior to that, I used to work for Adaptive Insights, and then prior to that, I was, like I mentioned before, was a finance manager for over a decade.
Awesome. So you've been definitely involved in this planning and budgeting and finance space for quite a while.
For quite a while, definitely.
Great. Why don't we go ahead and dive into the topic around planning and budgeting, and specifically around PBCS, because obviously that's near and dear to your heart. But part of the reason that we wanted to bring you on and really talk about planning and budgeting right now is, based on my understanding, it's a very timely topic. Why is it such a timely topic right now?
Well, right now, I would say most organizations are in their planning cycles. They are going through the normal cycle that they would have either in Excel or another solution. So PBCS is a solution to any of those needs that finance teams typically have this time of year. It's also an exciting time to talk about PBCS just because of where the solution is at within NetSuite and its current kind of, I don't want to call it development, but we are getting it's an Oracle solution that we're bringing to the NetSuite customer base and being able to offer a complete solution from not only an ERP, but also from a planning perspective.
It's relatively new, but it's not. This hasn't been available to the NetSuite base for years. It's relatively recent to the NetSuite base. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's a fair statement. I would say the solution itself has been around for over 4 years. It is basically, it's Hyperion in the cloud. It's been migrated from an on-premise solution to a cloud-based solution.
And have you used Hyperion in your past as well?
I have. I've used Hyperion on-premise before, and that's definitely, it's a very powerful tool that allows you to do a lot of, I would call it, unique and complex planning, but it can also do simple planning such as OpEx and some of the other things that we do in our day-to-day finance lives.
And most finance, I assume most finance folks would know Hyperion or have used it in their past, or it's not a unfamiliar product.
Yeah, you could definitely say Hyperion is a household name amongst finance folks throughout kind of the network there.
So there's been a lot of activity in the planning and budgeting space, in particular in the cloud as of late. And I want to say, I think it was almost 10 years ago, SAP acquired OutlookSoft, and that spurred a bunch of investment. Oracle had just acquired Hyperion, SAP acquired OutlookSoft. And it feels like we're seeing a lot of activity again, a decade later with all the cloud products.
Absolutely. Everyone is trying to get away from this manual environment of performing budgeting, planning, and long-range planning in Excel or even some of the on-premise solutions that are out there that are available, because what happens is it just becomes disjointed and disconnected and really just becomes too convoluted to be able to manage, especially if you're going to decentralize a process such as budgeting, planning, or even long-range forecasting.
And would you say were the products? I mean, for most people, let me just say it that. I mean, is it different? Were the on-premise products that were there? Were they? Are people moving from those on-premise products to cloud products? Or are they moving primarily from Excel, or is it a little bit of both?
Oh, I'd say it's a healthy mix of both. So you've got some organizations that are long-term Excel users, they're comfortable there, that are now kind of migrating to cloud-based solutions because they can get all the same capabilities and flexibility out in the cloud-based solution. The on-premise users are moving away from on-prem because of the maintenance and the sophistication in the background to require those on-premise solutions, like moving to a solution like PBCS, where you've got all the same power of an on-premise solution, but it's been migrated to the cloud.
The cloud side of it, being in the cloud, being cloud-based, has that improved the accessibility of the solution? And I don't mean accessibility in the traditional sense, but I mean, it used to be you got to be a big company to consume this. Now anybody can consume it? Yeah,
it really has allowed us to scale it down to small and mid-sized organizations because it's not as labor intensive and also as capital intensive as investing in your typical on-premise solution, such as a regular Hyperion on-premise solution, where you've got to go in and have servers, you've got to have dedicated IT staff. PBCS has allowed us to be able to take that to a market that can scale up with us as they grow within the organization themselves.
So you, as an example, is it fair to say that you might have had a company that, when you're looking at that Excel versus product to do this, you might have not made a decision to move to a product because it's just not worth the effort?
Yeah, we have that conversation almost on a daily basis within my team around what the use cases are, what the value points are. A lot of those organizations are coming to the realization that products like PBCS are now affordable and that they can make the leap to the cloud.
With PBCS, though, with planning and budgeting, cloud solution, there's more than just kind of the traditional budgeting. You can do a lot more with that. Is that, can you talk about some of the different scenarios that
Very true. So those are definitely scenarios that are common, especially common use cases about just collecting all of that budget data and being able to aggregate it. That's budgeting and planning in its simplest form. Where you get the true value out of a solution like PBCS is where you start leveraging it based on maybe historicals, where you're using our predictive analytics engine that allows you to take 5 years worth of data or 3 years worth of data and project out into the future based on a set of algorithms that allows you to be able to see those those outcomes quicker and more efficiently. You can also do a tops-down approach where you want to run multiple scenarios for a board meeting that's coming up, so you can show them strategically which way we could go based on the decisions that we're making in that room.
And what, you mentioned you have this conversation every day. So how small have you been talking to, or have you seen people using this?
We've had all the way down to pre-revenue organizations that are just trying to scale up and get to a point where they can monetize their product and be able to start selling whatever that solution is or whatever that product is in the environment. So it really isn't just organizations of a certain size. We're seeing all organizations kind of come to the realization of the importance of budgeting and planning, and more specifically, even long-range forecasting.
It's obviously very tied in tightly with the NetSuite environment. Talk a little bit about that integration and how that works.
Yeah, well, so within PBCS, we allow the users to connect into NetSuite directly through our data management solution. And what that allows us to be able to do is not only run that integration manually to be able to bring that data in whenever they'd like, such as updating journal entries at month end and you need to see the latest and greatest financials, but we can also schedule that to run so finance and even the end users can come in and access that granular level GL data whenever they need it. If they're doing budget versus actual analysis, or maybe they're doing some root cause analysis on their P&L, why things are not shaping up the way they're supposed to be, they have that information at their fingertips. And the way PBCS works is you can store those transaction level details directly in the solution for an end user, but also the admins can drill all the way back into NetSuite and get down to transaction level detail that allows them to continue kind of the root cause analysis of whatever it is they're looking into from a variance perspective.
And that scales?
It does. It scales up to large organizations. You can go to our website and look at what types of organizations that we're working with, and you can see that it scales all the way down from an SMB organization all the way up to an enterprise level.
You were at Adaptive before, so you probably can talk about this very from a level of expertise or a level of insight. Workday acquired Adaptive. And their footprint of companies is much larger. My impression of Adaptive was more that it's it was very much smaller companies. Does this acquisition make sense? And just some thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's a unique play by Workday and an Adaptive because, like you said, Workday has typically been a large enterprise organization, and when I worked at Adaptive, that was not something that we were ever even really targeting was enterprise organizations because we knew we couldn't scale from an engine standpoint or an infrastructure standpoint where they're a relational database versus a cube-based environment that allows you to be able to kind of scale as information grows within your infrastructure.
Can a relational model not scale, or what's the difference here?
I think at some point in time, a relational database, think of it as a large spreadsheet that just continues to keep getting larger and larger, and then at some point in time, it just gets full to the point where it can't process any more information, or it can't process the calculations that are required for the screens to refresh or update your dashboards, those types of environments. With cube-based technology, you can do several things. You can segregate information into different cubes. You can also dictate in the infrastructure which items get refreshed at what time. So you can prioritize which ones are being updated within the infrastructure. So it really allows you to scale and control your data a lot more than a typical relational database.
Just so make sure I'm clear on that, Adaptive was really built more on that relational model. PBCS was really built on, Hyperion obviously very much a cube technology. Is Adaptive changing that? Do you have? I mean, or is that just kind of that's the architecture they chose?
That's definitely the architecture that they chose. They have discussed elastic cube technology, but I haven't really heard any insights into what exactly that is. And just about everyone in the space knows what cube technology is, or the underlying infrastructure of Hyperion. Everybody's comfortable with that and understands that that's kind of the world's leading engine for generating analytics.
To use PBCS, do you really have to understand Hyperion and understand cubes, or what's the average background of a user of this?
Well, I think, again, it's a finance-owned tool. We don't want this is not something that we're trying to get a bunch of IT involvement. That was kind of the point of moving it from an on-premise solution to a cloud-based solution, and we really truly want finance to own the solution from end to end, whether it's admin or whether it's creating end-user forms. We want that control to be within the finance team. So your typical finance user is going to be able to create users, create formulas, maybe different business rules on how things should operate within the structure, but they're going to be able to do that themselves and be able to scale very quickly. And it's just like learning any other solution. You're going to get in and learn it as quickly as you start getting into the solution itself.
I mean, every finance person I know, they love Excel. That's where they live. That's where they, it's just in general, that's their comfort level.
Yeah, and I think that's really one of the unique advantages of PBCS because it comes with the Smart View solution, which allows you to take those data points out into an Excel environment, and really it's a blank slate. And I think that really kind of sets us apart from the competition because of that usability. Everyone in finance is familiar with Excel, and anybody who's used Hyperion has more than likely used SmartView, and they're huge fans of it because of that flexibility of not only having Excel functionality, but having access to the Hyperion technology, but also the ability to get back into your different data points, such as NetSuite transactions, or maybe even just NetSuite GL trial balance data.
So maybe just take it even a step more basic for me. So SmartView did let me take a chunk of data and analyze it in Excel.
So think of it this way: is you're opening up an Excel workbook, and this workbook is being run by the SmartView technology itself. It's creating a live connection to the PBCS environment, which allows you to bring in actuals, bring in budgets, bring in forecasts, and really kind of bring all that information together to tell a story. Because ultimately, why everyone takes information out to Excel is to tell a story to someone else who either doesn't have access to the solution or doesn't want access to the solution. So they're trying to tell that in either a visual way through charts and graphs or through trend lines and trends within a Excel workbook. And SmartView allows them to be able to do that in any of those forms using native Excel functionality plus the PBCS solution.
And because it's tied into the data, they're getting the real truth. They're getting it, and you're avoiding that.
Data integrity only goes up because you've got that live connection, but also the timeliness of that data. I think that's one of the big cost savings and benefits to PBCS is the live connection to PBCS, which is connected to NetSuite. Your finance team is no longer pulling manual data pulls out of the GL or somewhere else and aggregating it together and doing all the wonderful things that we can do in Excel, but we don't need to. There's solutions to do that, and it's called PBCS and SmartView that do that for you so you can focus on the true analytics and what those numbers are telling you and how you should drive the business.
I've got to ask, what about security? When you're giving people access to all that data, I mean, can you lock it down? How do you make sure that?
User security can go all the way down to what we call a dimension level. So that allows you to really segregate information and get into some complex security if your organization needs that. So you have the comfort and peace of mind that not only do you have access to your data, but you can segregate it by different users, user groups, and even get down to an account level where you can control that all in one location from an admin perspective.
If you've ever met a famous athlete at a corporate event or gotten an official autograph, chances are Steiner Sports made it happen. Here's Brandon Steiner.
We believe that there's magic in the moments that sports creates. We get customers closer to the game and help companies use the power of sports to grow their business. We've been in business 30 years, and we've had multiple systems to keep track of all the athletes and all of our customers. Multiple systems means multiple headaches. So we made the move to NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite lets us replace all of our finance, inventory, and CRM functions with one convenient system. Now all the departments can see the same data. And if I have a question about our business, I can get the answer quickly.
This month, NetSuite is offering a free 60-minute business review with an expert in your industry to identify opportunities to turbocharge your growth. To get your free review, go to netsuite.com/Steiner. That's netsuite.com/Steiner.
So obviously you're a big fan of PBCS. You're selling it every day. You're going out there. You're talking to companies about why it's important. I assume that's both NetSuite existing customers, but also new ones that are considering NetSuite. Do you see it kind of across both, or are you seeing different questions when you talk to those different audiences?
I think the different audiences pose different questions, because usually with an existing customer, they're already doing some type of budgeting and planning, and they're looking to either improve on a solution that they've already purchased, or they're looking to get out of Excel and kind of get out of that manual world of aggregating information together and disseminating it. The direct side, where we're selling in with ERP deals, we're selling a complete solution, that we're selling, here's one provider. We're going to be not only your ERP system, we're going to be your budgeting and planning, and then also your reporting as well, is what PBCS is great at. So it allows you to kind of have the best of both worlds of, here's one complete system that talks to each other fluidly, and you don't have to worry about integrations at some later point where things start to break down.
And is it, I assume this goes across all the industry. I mean, NetSuite goes across a number of industries, as you know, obviously, but is this, what are you seeing? Are you seeing this being adopted more, or are there more interest in retail versus distribution, or manufacturing, or software, or service? I mean, is it kind of all across the board?
It's definitely been across the board. And one of the things that's really unique about NetSuite itself and the SuiteSuccess methodology is that it has allowed us to tap that knowledge from a vertical standpoint of being able to make sure that it's industry specific, whether it's us providing a demo or even an implementation and best practices around an implementation. We're going to be able to leverage the PBCS solution to be able to provide an environment that's just as configured as their ERP system to their needs for budgeting and planning and forecasting.
So you just brought up SuiteSuccess. So where does planning and budgeting on the stairway go? I mean, so is this something that, people, is this phase 2 of the stairway? As people are thinking about their implementation, where do you see this fall into the stairway?
Well, it definitely falls on the stairway. It really depends on the organization of where it falls on the stairway. From an implementation standpoint, if you think about it, you're having the same conversations during a PBCS implementation as you are during an ERP implementation. So oftentimes we find that the implementations are going concurrently. And it's great because what ends up happening is you have a PBCS team that's building a kind of an end state of what the solution should look like. And ultimately that results in reporting. So we can kind of work our way backwards. And we oftentimes seeing it just bundled in up front with a with a new ERP customer, so they can kind of design what they want the outcomes to be within the ERP system, so they build that infrastructure correctly.
It's the same players, the same set of people that are involved on the implementation and the inside of a company when they're doing this?
Exactly. It's always finance and accounting. Finance and accounting are always kind of talking to each other about, here's what we need from an ERP requirement standpoint, and then finance is always kind of the voice of, here's what we've got to get out of it in order to kind of drive the captain the ship, so to speak. And,
when you, what's just in terms of lessons or advice you'd give, are there, as folks are evaluating and thinking about the implementation, lessons of things they need to avoid, or what will help them be more successful?
During implementation, I would say you really start from the end and work your way back, because oftentimes what we see is they want to go through an ERP implementation and then maybe do PBCS second phase and then realize they didn't build all of the information required into the ERP implementation to provide the reports or the outcomes that they were looking for from a budgeting, planning, or even a reporting solution standpoint. So I definitely envision the end state of what you're trying to get out of the ERP system at a minimum, but also just think about really kind of tying those two implementations together and having them tied at the hip, because they're going to be invaluable at the end.
And has SuiteSuccess helped with that?
It does. SuiteSuccess really provides the best practices and the frameworks of how to take an organization through an implementation and what I would call a graduation between different levels of ERP solutions and different budgeting solutions. It really helps them think through that in the detailed fashion that they need to as they go along.
Makes sense. Let's kind of what I've heard you say this before, and maybe you can, I'm sure it's evolved, but if you had to give what's the top 5 for PBCS? So if someone's thinking about, I'm considering PBCS, what's your top 5, and why should people care?
Top 5, I would start out with that it's one owner of the product. You don't have to worry about contacting multiple vendors, different customer support, managing all the logistics that go along with that. Number 2 is the tight integration across the solution itself between ERP and into PBCS. That integration will save you time and money over time, just from a manualness standpoint, and then just from a data integrity standpoint, you're going to be able to have more timely, accurate information. Your third, I would go in and start talking about just the suite of products that NetSuite offers, and really Oracle from an EPM suite standpoint, being able to tie all those solutions together. So as you kind of evolve and scale is another one that I would throw out there as well. Scalability. I oftentimes see organizations migrating from other solutions because they've outgrown them. It's no longer working. It doesn't calculate anymore. The screens aren't refreshing like they used to. So they've quickly outgrown the solution. And sometimes we're seeing that happen within 6 to 12 months, depending on the organization's trajectory from a growth standpoint. So you can really kind of get yourself in a bind there and overcommit early if you don't pick the solution that can scale down but also scale with you as you kind of explode.
That makes a lot of sense. It seems like that, and we talk a lot about that with NetSuite. You want to be able to have, a system that's going to scale with you as you grow, and that's obviously an important thing. It sounds like PBCS, it's kind of goes in lockstep with that growth pattern, and really been able to facilitate that.
It truly does. It allows you to be able to be a startup company, but also turn into a enterprise organization. Whatever time frame that is where you mature to an enterprise organization, it's going to scale with you and really be the last solution that you'll ever need from a planning, budgeting, cloud solution standpoint.
Anything, any new kind of innovations you want to share, Mike, that have, kind of maybe, I don't know, come out in the last 6 months or so, or that you want to kind of bring up and highlight?
Yeah, there's a lot of things going on the PBCS front. I think we've talked about this before, where being able to be under the Oracle umbrella and really have those resources behind us, we've really been able to take the product to a different level of where integration is going to continue to evolve, where you're going to be able to manage that more effectively, but also be able to push data both directions. You're going to be able to import metadata and have that live connectivity to NetSuite itself, so you're not updating infrastructure all of the time. The other things you're going to see is what's great about being a PBCS customer is that Oracle's update schedule for PBCS is on a monthly basis. They're making major upgrades to the solution to the point where almost I can't even keep up with the capabilities that they're adding within that format as well. And then some of the things that we're seeing from a new customer perspective is we're really going to market in a SuiteSuccess fashion. We're building out these SuiteSuccess best practice models that allow us to be able to go into the marketplace and offer a solution to an organization without them having to go through a full requirement session saying, here's what we've seen, here's the best practices we've seen across your industry. Let's start here and just kind of let it evolve.
I did a webinar with another customer, and she described SuiteSuccess as the happy path. The leading practices that come with it really was like, she said, it was the happy path for us. We just wanted to go down that path, and then we made some tweaks. Sounds like that's kind of one of the benefits it really brings.
It definitely does, but when we think about SuiteSuccess, we can evolve into it. It's something that we can have a best practice right out of the box and really get you stood up quickly and getting the value out of the solution that you just purchased really quickly, but then also keep kind of stacking on sophistication as your business changes, as you're getting more complex from a revenue modeling standpoint or a personnel standpoint. We can bolt those things on very quickly within the environment and really kind of take you to that next level.
At the beginning, we talked a little bit about timing. The reason this is relevant, people are in their budgeting and planning cycle now. So if I was looking at it right now, is this something that's I could impact my 2020 planning cycle?
You can go with that. I would definitely consider it for next year. Now's the time to get that budget approved for going into fiscal year 2019 as you start thinking about that, making sure that there's a budgeting and planning and reporting line item in your budget, whether it's an Excel or another solution. Now, making sure that that placeholder's there. That's why it's critical now, but also keep in mind that there's a lot of value to be gained out of a solution like PBCS that doesn't involve planning and budgeting, that you can get this stood up, say in February or March, start doing your budget versus actual planning, getting your reporting down, and really just getting used to the system before your next budgeting cycle. That way you can leverage the system and really get acclimated before going into your first budget season.
Makes sense. So just to kind of wrap this up, Mike, just any other kind of last minute advice you want to give to folks just around PBCS, the competition, just kind of what should they do in making sure that as they're thinking about this?
Yeah, I would highly suggest anyone considering a solution like PBCS is make sure that you're doing your due diligence around scalability, making sure that it can scale with you not only today but into the future and can scale up and down, whether it's good times or bad. And then also just making sure that you're able to kind of come in and really get what you need from the product itself. I think a lot of times what we see out there is it's demoware, and what ends up, it shows really well and really doesn't allow the prospect to understand what the capabilities of the solution are. And I think PBCS really kind of separates itself from actionable things that we can do within the solution versus just a demonstration itself.
That makes sense, Mike, and I'm sure people will be interested to see some of those demonstrations and thoughts from you, if they have you in. Well, I want to thank you again for coming in, being the guest here on the NetSuite podcast. It's definitely been an enjoyable conversation, and I'm glad you're able to share those insights with us.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to Ranga Bodla for taking over this episode of the NetSuite podcast, and Mike Shannon for providing lots of insight into planning and budgeting. This was all made possible by our sponsors at the Second City and Steiner Sports. I'd also like to say thank you to our editors at Lampstand, the Oracle Production Studio, and of course, all you listeners for tuning in. Don't forget, rate, review, and subscribe.
You just listened to the NetSuite podcast. Be sure to tune in every week with more NetSuite developments, stories, and insights into the benefits of one integrated system to help you run your business.